At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Pastor Babette Chapman and Reverend Robin Bell, and Pastor Babette and Reverend Bell. Babette is the lead pastor at Augsburg University, and I also have the honor of being Babette's brother, and Reverend Bell is a professor at both at Bethel College and Northwestern University in St. Paul. And we're also blessed to have Robin also supporting our staff part-time at the Center for Leadership and Neighborhood Engagement. And so I would invite Pastor Babette and Pastor Robin, maybe just a brief word of introduction, if you would be so kind.
Pastor Babette.
Thank you, Pastor Robin. I am Pastor Babette Chapman. I am university pastor at Augsburg University, and I am also director of campus ministry.
Robin Bell, professor over at Northwestern University in St. Paul, where I teach out of the social justice program that had the opportunity to create an intercultural studies program. And I teach over at Bethel a course on social activism, focusing on Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer, and Malcolm X.
Well, thank you very much. And so it's a great honor to be able to have both of you amazing leaders with us this evening. And I want to especially thank you. Part of the reality that we are navigating at the Center for Leadership Neighborhood Engagement and as a larger community and our aspiration to be beloved community is acknowledging that for 500 years, there's been a schism between the experience of Black, brown, and marginalized people and the white community. And there's so often that the white community doesn't have the gift or the opportunity to actually hear voices in relationship from the Black and brown marginalized community. So your individual voices, we're going to thank you for the vulnerability and the being brave to share your story here with us. So I have three questions that I would invite you for our conversation this evening for our reflection. So who are you and why are you here?
I'll go first, Robin. Like I said, I'm Babette, right? I'm a beloved child of God, spirit-filled. I dare to say I believe I'm strongly anointed. And why I'm here, I think my answer is long. I'll try and give you the short answer. But I'm very mindful for me currently, the power and the mantle of being the first. So I said that I'm the first Black female university pastor at Augsburg University, but I'm also the first Black woman director of campus ministry at Augsburg University. And every day I'm very aware of the power and the burden of being the first. And I'm here because I don't think that dominant culture is aware of our awareness of the burdens that we carry. And I'll pause there. Robin, why are you here?
Why am I here? Man, well, who am I? Briefly, and first, on behalf of Babette and I, we want to thank the Klein staff for this production and grace to each of you who are out there. Peace be unto you for joining us this evening. I am the son, the firstborn of William R. Bell. That's my father, who was a Negro League baseball player. with the world champion Kansas City Monarchs. My mother, Itasca Parker, her family was the second Black family to move in, settle into Iowa as homeowners. So that's a rich heritage. And I got to give a shout out to my ancestors on the Parker side, Isla, Izetta, Florence, my grandmother, Richard and Donald on my dad's side, and Morris, because those people nurtured me and shaped me to be the person that I am today. So I'm here because they all gave me a piece of that narrative. Like, we didn't have the opportunity, and they contributed to me having an opportunity. So boy, you better represent us like you got some sense. And as the young people say, speak the truth too, with courage. The other thing, the why I'm here, share my voice. I mean, it's my calling. That's what I do in white spaces. So, and I'll just leave it at that.
Do you have any more, Babette? Before we go?
Well, I feel like Robin kind of dipped his toe in the second question. But no, I don't have. We'll build on this. I'm. Yeah. Bring the second question on.
Okay. The second question is, how do you show up?
Yeah. So, I show up in the spirit of my ancestors. If he knows I was smiling because I think sometimes, and there's an honor and a privilege to be in this room with two of my brothers. One that's my mentor for life, and the other who is a bonus mentor. But I show up in the spirit of our ancestors. And Robin said it because I am clear that the work that I get to do every day is an answered prayer, right? So when I talk about answers, I'm talking about a grandmama that prayed for me, or an aunt or an uncle that prayed for me, that my struggle and the way that I live and walk into spaces are not as hard and as difficult as theirs were. And so when I walk into these spaces, or when I look in the mirror and I realize, yeah, I'm in this room because I belong in this room. I know that I belong in the room because it's an answered prayer. And I could call names. I could say Reese and Josie and Mary and Charles and Papu and Grandma and Aunt Willette and Aunt Christine and the ancestors that I know died in the cotton fields that I never met, and they didn't say their names, or the uncle or the grandfather that's one of the unknown named slaves or unknown lynched persons down in the South. But it's because of all of them. That's how I show up. I show up so that their life, their prayers, their legacy also shows up.
Yeah, like Babette, my ancestors have a whole lot to do with me, how I show up. And growing up, being born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa, talk about the first, wherever I remember just growing up, the first, go to the store, the first. And so that lesson and has stayed with me, and I could say a lot, but the biggest takeaway I got and what drives me today, I'm very aware of how this country operates. And Dad used to tell me, look, boy, I remember when I went out to California, I said, Dad, they got racism out there. He laughed at me like I was crazy. He said, they got racism everywhere because it's evil. And my mom and dad taught me, like, in spite of that, And my dad, I remember him saying when he was playing ball down south, he said, I just couldn't understand why people have to just hate another person because of the color of their skin. And mom taught me, in spite of that, you still got to operate out of love. So that's how I navigate in my everyday life, interacting with in white spaces, with majority culture, but any human being for that matter.
So I'm thinking, so we have this wonderful process, this wonderful gathering of all these wonderful people. And yet there are a lot of people that look like you that don't show up for these events. So why do you imagine that, unlike yourself, well, why do you imagine that some people don't show up?
Well, I bet I'm definitely going to let you kick that. If you like.
You're so generous, Robin. I think I don't think this is in their sphere of I don't want to use the word influence, right? Like, do they know about it? And if they know about it, do they see where it connects to their reality? Right? Like, there have been times when I wanted to show up, but it didn't work with my schedule. But I'm also aware of like who else is in the room, right? So it's like I tell somebody, come check this out. And it's just like at you invite somebody to the cookout, right? This Black stuff, I'm talking Black stuff now, right? So when you invite somebody to the cookout, right? And the first question they ask you is who's gonna be there, right? So that's that same question, right? When you invite other people that identify as BIPOC to come to something like this, they're gonna ask the question, who else gonna be there? Now that's a coded question, right? What's the code, Robert?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways you could take it. How hostile is it going to be? I'm just going to keep it real. Will I be traumatized? I think it's an underlining theme.
Yeah, somebody said, will there be raisins in the potato salad?
Can you interpret that? What does that mean?
It's like certain cookouts. Like, so here's one, and it's a touchy one for me. When people ask me, am I coming to the picnic? And I tell them I don't use that word, right? We're having a picnic, come to the picnic. And I'm like, yeah, I don't use that word. And they're like, why? Because back in the day, the first time I heard that picnic mean pick a nigga, I'm like, no, I'm not going, right? And it's the same thing. Like, you invite me to someplace, am I going to be the only? Which means I'm either be the expert to all your curiosity, or I'm going to be there waiting for someone to see me and acknowledge my presence. So the same thing is true when they ask me who's going to be there, right? What am I going to be on display? What do you think, Robin?
Well, yeah, another one is, and I don't like to go to, I mean, frankly, I struggled with being here tonight because is this going to be an opportunity for folks to pick cotton, and that's real because, like, I mean, just living in this racialized society, unfortunately, I mean, it's just another mass of dehumanization or oppression or exclusion. But in America, we kind of stuck on racism. And so as a person who represents a color that represents, well, we can exclude him, we can even murder him and get away with it, and do it because we know we can get away with it. Man, it's like, Lord, how do I mean, it's insane. Like, I don't want to be the special one. James Baldwin said, I don't want to be the Negro. You created it anyway in the first place because you needed a stereotype to understand your own self. I don't want to participate in that. And so, because it's not healthy, man. I regret spending a lot of my time in situations like this, but I hope to God that hey, from the encounter, it might help someone to pivot upstairs and get beyond this. It's a godforsaken, god-awful narrative. But I'm not special. It's just that I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, and probably like Babette and Pastor Babette and Pastor Kelly, our life, our trajectory has been such that we develop a competence. But Lord have mercy, when I get done from the big house, I want to let my hair down and exhale.
So third question is, so you both work in academic arenas. And so can you share some of the challenge in the 21st century, how you navigate as leaders in predominantly white spaces?
So I'll start, but I might hop off of Robin. So for me, in a predominantly white institution that strives to be, right, it's in their statement about diversity and inclusion. I know it's a goal, but for me in my department, I have most of the, and I call them my team, dominant culture, and yet it's so easy for students to come in, and when they want something or when they want a serious question answered, they go past me and they go to the white guy, who then turns around and has to come and ask me, right? And then how do I navigate that? And how do I be my true authentic self, right? Because like I'm at the place now where I don't throw a brick and hide my hand. I am Babette. I show up Babette. This is me. And I show up as me because I'm affirmed in my identity in Christ. Like I know that I am where I am by the grace of God. And I know that the Holy Spirit has equipped me to do the work. And that I believe that there's a need for me to be in these spaces. But it's hard sometimes when I don't think dominant culture can handle the truth, especially coming from a Black woman, because Black women are always identified as angry. And how is anger associated with truth with Black women, but is not associated with truth with dominant culture? What do you think, Robin? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
when you speak truth, and you can say the exact same truth in the exact same way as the dominant culture, and the dominant culture is not angry. Oh, they're so honest. They're so transparent. But it's just because I tilt my head when I say the same truth that I'm angry. Or is there value in my input?
Yeah, I'll just share a story. Hopefully help me, Lord, quickly. So I was teaching a course, subject matter on racism and the racist imagination of Christianity. And I had a young man who disrupted continually the class, and we were addressing, well, he contended that America is about, survival of the fittest and majority culture run out, so there. And the way I teach the course, I teach in a way that I create a community of learners. So the students kind of took him out. And I knew when he said that, he was just disrupting the class because he believed he could do that, right? And anyway, fast forward to tape, 5 years later, I met the young man again. He came up to me and apologized. And And I just said to him, well, you're very enthusiastic about what you think you believed in, but you also knew what you were doing. Go back to George Floyd. Thank God that young child took that photo, because here's where I'm at now. We all know. We all know what America is about. It's funny, when you unscramble America, you get I am race. I'm willing to continue to move forward, but I'm not going to explain anymore how racism operates and all of that, because I know where I'm at in academia. My scholarship's not valued. I'm getting ready to publish 2 or 3 articles now, and there's only a few journals that I could go to that would even want to publish the subject matter, because my knowledge, it doesn't value. But I could really care less. I'm just living out my gifts and by God's grace flourish in spite of. But that's where I'm at now. And that is, when is America, when are we going to grow up?
America is young. That's what I heard white folks say. Reality, America is young. It's really the youngest country. So America's still growing. Challenge is who putting the kid, who they putting in charge of the kids, right? That's the thing. Like some of the stuff that or white folk, right? Like some of the stuff they do, like you said, is childish. But is it called childish when they do it? I don't know. I'm just asking the question, Robin. Like, yeah, but you said something about value. And I think that's a question around how to navigate predominantly white spaces. I had a friend once, she challenged me because I was talking about how I felt like they were listening to me. And she said, yeah, you can always tell when they value you. What do you think about that, Robin? Can you tell when they value you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, geez, spirit bears witness, right? So you can tell. I am hopeful. The younger, it's interesting, the younger, I get older every year, but the students are, they're always the same age. So the gap is, but what I'm seeing, I have some hope, because they want to know how to deal with the race, right? But they don't just want information. They actually want to change their mindset and get on with some practices. But it's hard because we got to change those systems and structures too. But I have hope I hope I live long enough to yeah.
One more question to throw at you. So what, and this would be the final question, what would you hope for or want, whether you call them allies or accomplices, in terms of people that, as we move forward in this young nation, what would you want from white people as accomplices, allies, whatever, however you determine that? What would you desire?
I go back to Malcolm. I just wish we could sit down and just talk. And I'm blessed to have some folks who represent the majority culture, where I can honestly talk and don't have to worry about white fragility, nice racism, but just talk as human beings and share our thoughts and feelings. We got to be fearless, people. And life is uncomfortable. My God. who knows? Maybe the pandemic is preparing us to, to live with being uncomfortable. But I just wish we could come together. And yet, you know, we can't even like, I mean, we're still dealing with voting registration rights.
Yeah. Well, let's not go to what I want you to stick with what you want, Robin. So yes,
fearless conversations, and man, oh, I'm going to say this. Just ask God to help us not be idolaters to whiteness, okay? Because I think that's a lot what's going on. I mean, who do we really worship?
Yeah, when you say we, speak for yourself. I don't worship whiteness. So, right, just speak for yourself. You know, I'm good with whiteness. I like white people. Like people who identify as white, you know, I'm flipping it. Some of my best friends are white, right? Like if they identify as white, like I'm good with authentic, transparent, vulnerable white folk. I'm good with the kind of white folk that's standing here talking to me. And then the kind of white folk that just walk right up while we having a conversation, they just cut me off because they want to talk to you and they more important than me. Like, I'm good with the kind of white people be like, excuse me, you cut Babette off. Like, that's what I want. I want white folk to do the work right now. Like, don't process it. Don't theorize it in your, if you feel it's wrong, react to it right now. And then the best part about that, Robin, is if you act on it right now, I get your back. Right? That's partnership. Right? Mm-hmm. I feel like Black people have had white people's back for an extremely long time. Ain't that what Martin said? Malcolm said, boss, we sick. Right? Like, I want white people to really be serious about doing the work right now and not doing too much head work. I want them to do their heart. I want to do hard work, like not head work. Yeah.
Well, Babette, Robin, thank you very much. And now we're going to break out into our triads, into our breakout rooms. And that's where we do the real work, right? Vulnerable, honest conversation, listening to one another from that deeper place of really now this breakout time is a time to go into that conversation about what we want. Right? And so with that, we want to really thank you for inspiring reflection time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now as we enter into our reflection time, we're going to have about 20 minutes. And the questions that we will have I'm looking for them. So in your breakout, have a conversation. First, introduce yourselves and where you're from briefly, and then equitably share the time around these three questions. What stirred you for you in your conversation? What stirred up for you? What price do you think BIPOC people pay to be present in white dominant spaces? And how might you continue this conversation in your own context? And you're debriefing, type your insights in the chat. We will now go into the breakout for about, I think it's around 20 minutes. So type your insights in the chat and we'll lift some of those up. Raise your hand if you want to speak. And remember to keep your comments brief. You can see the little raise your hand icon down by your share screen by the chat.
Hi, I really just had a couple questions. One is to Reverend Bell. you said a sentence, I hope I live long enough to, and then you didn't finish it. And I was wondering if you would like to finish it.
Oh my God. Yes. I hope I live long enough to see the young people advocate for or be in solidarity, and I think they are, with all the different injustices that go on in our country. Because if we just focus on one particular, I don't think that's going to change anything. But I think we're going to have to, and so we're going to need to see ourselves all as the human family of God.
Thank you. And then a term, I didn't understand it. It was about showing up in with the cost of showing up in white dominated spaces, an opportunity to pick cotton.
Oh, yeah. It's funny too. So I get invited out to have meetings with people, and the invite, I'll get the text or the email, and they'll say, boy, I would love to meet with you and pick your brain.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
Patricia Neal says, how do I make space for the felt sense of frustration and despair, of anger, of 500 years of white blindness?
What was the question? Could you repeat the question?
Patricia Neal. So how do I make space for this felt sense of frustration, despair, anger, of 500 years of white blindness? How do I make space for the felt sense of frustration?
Is that for anybody to respond to, or?
What, you or Babette?
Well, as a human being who represents a particular group, Buffalo soldiers, and the relationship with my Native brothers and sisters. So, like, for me, when I hang out with my Native brothers, Indigenous brothers and sisters, I listen. I listen. I think there's times when we just need to listen.
And Kathy has a question. Kathy Solomon has her hand raised, but Babette, if you have another answer to.
Yeah, I feel like Patricia has a lot in that question. So I would say unpack it, because you're trying to get at a lot. And you have three words, all emotion: frustration, despair, and anger. And I would say unpack that, and then don't make space, hold space. And that could be just you and one person at a time. I think one, reach one, teach one. So, yeah.
Pastor Babette. All right, Kathy, I've given you permission to unmute yourself if you'd like to.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that, Kelly. I don't know if this is necessarily a question, but it's more so a comment in how you both introduced yourselves as legacies of your ancestors, and how they have to do with how you show up and who you are. And I'm just grappling with also that I show up with the legacy of my ancestors, yet there's a huge aspect of that legacy now that I don't want to hold and carry anymore, and that being white supremacy and racism. So really it's just an observation, necessarily than a question, but really appreciated you introducing yourselves that way. And I guess Is there an invitation for us in the dominant culture to say, what do we hold and what do we repent?
Mhm.
There's a lot of richness in the chat too. In Glean Summits, Kate Booth, I need to find opportunity to open my social circle. I don't know how to start. Sarah, I loved when Babette said that we are called to heart work, not head work. Speak with your relatives. Know that God's Spirit is with you. Know that it's going to be awkward and do it anyhow. It gets easier. Okay, Reverend Bell, I want to be in the room for the fearless conversations. I would like to thank the speakers for the honesty and the deep sharing. From Lisa, powerful to talk about stages of development and working through decentering whiteness. Powerful to consider Robin and Babette's comments about the prices they pay to be in white spaces and to imagine better what it is to be ready and able to act in the moment, speak up, have one another's back. The invitation to be authentic, vulnerable, transparent, together at the table, to speak bravely on a street with one another. Are there any other hands going?
Yep, there's one hand raised. Darcy has her hand raised. Their hand raised. So I've asked Darcy to unmute if they'd like to.
And Richard Hansen, brother Richard Hansen, I saw his hand was up.
Okay. Darcy's unmuted though.
Hello, Darcy McKenzie. I live in Mendota Heights, Minnesota, and I think all these. One thing that I'm uncomfortable with is the fact that we have all these, fabulous speakers, and Pastor Chapman brings us together, and Robin and Babette are here, and it's like, how uncomfortable you guys must have to feel just to have us be like all these white people asking you what we should be doing. And I just like, why can't we as church or as a community just like address our whiteness without like putting you guys on the spot to tell us what we need to be doing?
Okay, can I speak? Darcy, you didn't put us on the spot. We Pastor Kelly extended an invitation. It was up to us to accept it. And there's two things, right? There's head work, right? Which you have to do, but there's hard work that we have to do together, right? So if I'm not willing to put myself on the cross, right? Or at the very least in the shadow of the cross, right? We all have work to do. And I can't really stand in judgment of you if I'm not willing to put myself on the spot. And the challenge is what you do with what you hear and how you take what you hear and discover and impact other communities. Because I believe that you could have an authentic conversation with a white person and go deeper than I'd ever be able to unless I'm in relationship with them. So we show up no matter how difficult because we care.
I want to thank you for the question or the comment.
Mm-hmm.
One of the tension points and gifts of our gathering is embracing the discomfort. One of the glues that holds white supremacy, racism together is comfort. The comfort that comes from being white, being the dominant. And so one of the movements toward change is for white people to be more comfortable with discomfort as part of the process for change. And so thank you. And everything that Pastor Babette said, but this really is to be a portal in that movement toward embracing change.
Darcy's extending a lot of gratitude with their body movement. Appreciate that. If anybody else has a question or comment, we probably have time for one more if you raise your hand. Or we have time for Robin and Babette to give closing thoughts. Oh, okay. Kate raised her hand.
I guess it's not really so much a question, but just really deep gratitude to everyone who made this possible, and to Robin and Babette and Kelly. I mean, this is a powerful thing that you've given us. You've given us this opportunity to hold this beautiful conversation in our heart. And I want you to know, and Robin, I think this happened too when you talked to that young man who was in your class, and probably with everybody that you've known in your life, that you're planting seeds. And these seeds are, it's our responsibility to receive the seeds and hold them in our hearts. And I do truly believe that when we come together, all of us, in this love and in this grace that has been allowed, there are things that are happening in each one of us. And that's what the relationship is. And I'm just so grateful that you came, because you had no idea what to expect, or you did have an idea what to expect. But you came, and I'm grateful for everybody who is here tonight, because this is something more powerful than I think any of us is gonna be able to know, but it will play out in our lives.
Thank you.
Amen, Kate. Thank you. Well, yeah, thank you for that.
Pastor Kelly?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Robin. And Babette, final words as we finish.
Final words. I got to give a special shout out to my group, Brother Dan from Florida. He's a smart man. And Barbara and Nikki and Cindy. Love you. Appreciate the conversation. And thank you.